Like, imagine how cool that offering could be, how cool the marketing could be. And look, it's so interesting, and we laugh, but it'd be a pretty awesome business. Like, if you loved Game of Thrones and you could serve people who loved Game of Thrones, where's the hurt in that? So it is, it's really powerful, once you get that creative. And I guess that's, we're numbers people, right? In financial advice, we all fall back on the numbers. So I think we'll naturally fall back on the boring demographics, age, financial status, like sex, all the sort of things. And really, I don't think that's where the juice is. I think the magic really is how they feel and where they're at.
Welcome to episode 38 of the Innovating Advice Show. I'm joined by Peita Diamantidis, a self-described new form of geek hybrid, a maths and finance nerd with a passion for communicating that has her on a mission to empower the public to take charge of their finances. In this episode, we get to enjoy Peita's sense of humor and 20 years of experience in financial services as she shares what it means to transform human hamsters into action heroes. We also discuss entrepreneurial thinking for advisors and why the industry hasn't had to be entrepreneurial, a creative way to discover and narrow your niche, perhaps comically so, and how to build your customer journey. Links and show notes at innovatingadvice.com/episode 38. You're listening to the Innovating Advice Show, and I'm your host, Kate Holmes, bringing you the global pulse on financial services innovation, featuring financial planners, financial advisors, and related professionals from all corners of the globe. Let's dive in. G'day, Peita.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. That was a pretty good g'day, I've got to say.
Well, hey, I'm
not as awkward as sometimes it can be.
I'm an honorary Aussie from living there, so I try to keep it.
Yes, see, we've brainwashed you. It's fantastic. Our evil plan is working.
I know. Hey, I was a willing participant. So, Peita, I love your tagline on LinkedIn that says you are transforming human hamsters into action heroes. What does that look like?
Yeah. Look, I'd love to say that there was some design originally behind that, but it all actually started because I'm a huge 80s action hero fan. So I have this, I love all of that, like Lethal Weapon, all those movies, and the storytelling behind them, including others like Star Wars and other things. And what it's sort of, we were sort of brainstorming how we can connect with the public better. And what became really clear is inaction is one of the biggest problems for most people in most parts of their lives, not just financial. Yep. So not doing something is what gets in most people's way. And so as we started to progress that thinking and digging into a bit deeper, we realized that lots of people just feel stuck. They sort of feel like they're stuck in the cage and don't even realize, I think, there's anything outside of it. That feeling where you're just eating, sleeping, working, and then suddenly 2 years later, there's some milestone birthday and you feel like you haven't got any further. And I think we've all had that feeling where you just, I'm a year older and I don't know that I've done anything in the last year. And so that's sort of what prompted this. It was a bit of a movement for us. It was changing our focus so that we can say, all right, people, you've got to stop feeling like a hamster. We need to start making you feel like an action hero, because action heroes aren't superheroes, right? Superheroes have some gift, right? They have something that makes them wonderful. Action heroes just do the tough stuff. They just turn up, face a battle and go, all right, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
And so we just love that attitude. We didn't want people to have a superhero power. We didn't want to make it feel out of their reach. We wanted to realize, just like John McClane in Die Hard, you can battle through. You can just keep on turning up and be that guy or be that girl, and
that's
get it
awesome.
done. So that's sort of where that all came from.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even waking up a year or two later. It can be 10 years later. And for me, it was one of my big moments was when I turned 30 and I looked back at my 20s and I was like, whoa, that kind of just flew by. I'm not living the life that I thought I would or wanted to. And so I call it a quarter life crisis. And I kind of blew up my life and packed what I could fit in my Mini Cooper and drove down to California. And I was like, don't know what's next, but it's like I had to get out of that hamster wheel.
Absolutely. And I think, it changes it to let's ride the wave. It doesn't mean that you have a plan necessarily, but your whole approach to things is a bit different. And it certainly turns into looking up and around you. I think part of the hamster cage is the head down. You're just, all right, well, I am where I am and I'm just going to plow away. And aside from being horribly demotivating, you don't realize opportunity when it steps up in all sorts of ways, whether that's work or life or love, anything. You've just got your head stuck down. And so I think it's that mindset shift of turning up, and just enjoying whatever it is you're at. And I guess probably at its heart, saying yes to a bit more. Like, I've really changed my attitude to things. And that's, over the last couple of years, that's turned into me flying to Helsinki for a wedding for 4 days and then flying home.
Nice.
Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal if you're potentially coming from the States, but from Australia, that's some 30-hour exercise each way. Things like that. Just saying, you know what? Can I afford it? Do I have the time? I do. I'm going, So it's just changing the way we sort of attack life.
That's fantastic. So thinking about kind of mindset, how we think about things, how we approach things, let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurial thinking for advisors. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think, the advice industry, and let's go broader, financial services or finance generally. Sure. I don't think we've had to be entrepreneurs for a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all been doing pretty well, in all facets of the industry, no matter which layer you're in. It can be advice, it could be in product land, it could be broker, whatever you are. Everybody's been doing pretty well. And so therefore, we get a bit fat and happy, don't we? Like, we're like, well, this is pretty good, why would I change things? And the truth is that I think exciting change and exciting innovation happens when things get hard. In my mind, I always think of MacGyver. So you're stuck in a nuclear bomb site, 400 feet under the ground, and he's got a headlamp and a piece of wire, and he manages to get out of there. It's that creative thinking that can get you out of a difficult situation. But I think when, as a whole industry, finance, it's been pretty good for so long, why would we do differently? Why would we question the norm? Why would we get a bit innovative, use more tech? Because we don't need to right now. We're doing okay. So I think, for me, that entrepreneurial thinking is challenging the norm and recognizing we need to sort of push those boundaries. Where we're sitting and what we're doing isn't necessarily the only way or the best way.
It's not. And look at Australia, of all places. How did that turn out when Royal Commission came in and all the financial planning sectors of the big banks are now gone? Doesn't that just kind of show you the dangers of not always thinking ahead and being nimble enough to make changes and be able to evolve?
Yeah, it does. And I think at its heart, I think that the industry in Australia, but certainly I think globally, I've used sort of travel in my old job, my past life was in investment banking, and so saw a lot of the global sort of industries. I think actually we haven't actually taken a good look at what we do for a long time. And at the heart of that is we've made finance about us. Yes. We haven't made it about the public.
Yep.
So, we call financial literacy something where they need to learn about us. I'm like, no. Hold on. Maybe we should just be talking in a way that the public can understand. So I think, the Royal Commission in Australia was a good example of where we'd sort of lost sight of it's actually about that human being, that individual that sits out there in public land and what they need and the journey they're going on, clearly this is also something that's a theme throughout other industries. The popularity of Donald Miller's book. I don't know whether you've read his book, The Story Brand book, Building a Story Brand.
I've got it on my iPad, and I'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's fascinating. And at its heart, it sort of says that, we need to be the Robin to the client's Batman.
Yes.
So it's that shift to sidekick, to guide, be Yoda, don't be Luke, whereas if you think about even just, and I say this with all love because we've made the same mistake, an advisor's website, it'll be all about the advisor, and that's just the way we all think. And that's the way we've all been trained and taught. But the best communicators, the best engagers, the best entrepreneurs, their websites are all about their target, their
Yeah,
niche. And
that's
that's
so
what
true.
resonates. Yeah. And so I think that's what the entrepreneurial thinking for me, ultimately, even though it's a lot about being more nimble, being more efficient, automating all those sort of things, at its heart, to me, it's about making it all about them, all about the consumer. And great entrepreneurs do that, and then they work out the rest of the stuff. They get the rest of it sorted, but it's always about the consumer.
So what would you tell people that are working in a larger organization that maybe they've got that attitude of, the way things have always been done and they're not really evolving, but let's say it's a great culture and they really enjoy who they're working with and they like their clients. How can they start to, I would say starting even with embracing their own entrepreneurial thinking, and then how can they use that to affect change within their organization?
Yeah, I think the first place you can start is ask. So have lots of conversations with your clients or people like your clients, and not just about finance, but just ask them, what's the biggest problem you're facing? Like, what's the biggest challenge right now? What are the things you're trying to work through? And invariably, money is going to be connected. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't think of a single situation where it's not. But if you ask lots of questions, you'll start to see a theme that could potentially be, for example, the single biggest reason people don't go ahead with advice. Like, you could find something that is a lifestyle issue or a challenge mentally they're having, a blockage or an attitude or a mindset. I mean, that's where that human hamster stuff starts to resonate for us, is because we realized people weren't taking action on advice because they didn't have purpose in life. Why would
Yep.
they get their money sorted if they don't really know where they're going?
Yeah.
So that was us breaking through a blockage for them. So I'd encourage, somebody's in maybe a big institution and really love it, but hey, we want to do a bit more or do it a bit differently. Just start having really deep conversations with your clients and say, look, I really want to understand what's going on with you, what's happening, what are the blocks, and start to collect that, and start to look for themes within that. And that's one way to start, to think about the next problem you could solve. So maybe you've solved a problem what's the next problem you could solve for that client? And it might be, I hesitate to say this given what's gone on globally with cruises, but I look at retirees or pre-retirees, and I can't believe there isn't a financial advisor that hasn't come up with a product that's how to pick your first cruise when you retire.
Oh.
Now, I know that doesn't sound like something an advisor should do, but what does every single client do?
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Right? That or something similar,
Yeah.
How can we not help them do that? And of course, when you help them do that, you're having a financial conversation, because there'll be the, can I afford it? And then that lets you dig deeper into the future and the future they want to build. So, I think it's just thinking about that thing that's in their head that is blocking them, or that is the one thing they want to solve right now. Help them solve that, and that just opens that can of worms, and that lets you sort of sit there as their sidekick and help them through the next challenge.
Yeah.
So I
So you've
think
got to bring,
that sort of research.
yeah. And you've got to bring a real curiosity to people, I think, to have those valuable conversations, because I think clients will pick up on if you're asking in a way that almost is trying to fish for an opportunity to sell a product versus
Yeah,
that genuine curiosity on what
yeah.
is going on in their life. Like I said, outside of financial decisions, but I'm with you. It all ties back in one way or another to the
It
financial parts of our lives.
it does, and I think probably if you want to be really good at this, it's probably do it to yourself first. So,
Yes.
what are the blockages you're facing? What are the lessons you've learned? How have you evolved? And be willing to share that, because the minute I've come through this realization that whatever that is, then they'll be like, oh, you are a human, you're not a robot. Let me share my story with you, so it instantly makes you feel like that sidekick to them, that person they can trust and be quite frank and open with. So I do think we can't be this distant guru. You just can't. I just don't think that works in this day and age. I think people expect somebody that's going to go on the journey with them and has challenges just like them. And it's just merely that we solve them for ourselves so we can solve it for them.
Yeah, and that is just so, so important. And that's something I've also said for years is when you're asking clients to share all about one of the most intimate aspects of their lives. I mean, when it comes to finances, right, we're all taught you don't talk about it. You don't talk about how much money you make or how much money you have. Talking about that is a big deal. And if you're not willing to be vulnerable with your clients, how can you ask them to do that? And when you do go down that path and you say, hey, I ended a marriage, or I left this job, or I was in debt, or whatever personal thing you've gone through, that creates so much more of a deep connection with your clients, because then you're connecting on that human level in addition to the business level.
100%. And I think that's where, this book, so Storybank, sort of changed my approach too, because I think as advisors, we feel we know what their problems are even before we've met them. Look, we know where it's going to go. Our experience says, we know what you need. We know what your problem is. We know what you need. I'm going to solve it. Woohoo! But the truth is everybody has their own specific challenges. Now they can be grouped. There can be a niche. Maybe it's the, new parents and they just haven't slept for, 7 weeks, or like every group has their own, but they are unique to them, and deeply understanding those and showing that you deeply understand those makes such a difference to their willingness to move forward. Whereas I think in this day and age, we are so used to brands that connect with us quickly that I think advisors are facing an uphill battle if we don't take ourselves on this journey, because people are used to somebody deeply, like we can see a Facebook ad and go, that person, that brand gets me instantly.
Yep.
And so if they can get you with a tile in Facebook and feel like they know you and know your challenges, then we need to get that good at it. As advisors, we need to truly understand the people we interact with, which I guess one of the challenges with that is we probably need to niche. We probably need to pick a narrower market and a group of people we can really specialize in their problems, the things they're facing, not the products they need, not the financial engineering we deliver for them, but their specific needs, and what, and what their challenge, what they're facing in their minds. It may not be a reality, but it's the thing in their head that's their blockage, deeply understanding that.
So how would you recommend for those that are kind of taking that entrepreneurial thinking to actually becoming an entrepreneur and starting their own business? How would you recommend that they go about figuring out what that niche is and how far to niche down?
Yeah, so I think probably understanding what fascinates you or what you're really interested in yourself helps. So I have to admit, it's been a long time since I sort of got a handle on the value I give and who I am, and therefore human hamsters into action heroes. So it took me a while to get to that point and really own my geek status, my movie nerd status, so there's part of it is truly understanding who you are. One of the best ways to start that is ask your friends. So friends and family will tell you, the best thing you do is, or when we're chatting about something, I love how you, they'll know you and they'll tell you who you are and what you can do. And so it's really hard to do, though. It's a bit scary because, people could say anything and we're afraid of that. But it's a wonderful place to start, to just get that sense and to start narrowing down, therefore, if that's my gift and that's what I'm interested in, who could I serve, what the niche might be. And that can sort of be that big picture. The next thing I'm going to suggest, which I know is a bit out of left field, is get a Facebook ad account. So if you've got a business or somebody who does, Facebook lets you build a profile for an ad, and it's basically this demographic profile, and it's everything you could possibly think of. It's age, location, income. They love Buffy but not Angel. They love walking, not running. They, like all those. So all of the features and characteristics and interests, and it tells you how many people on Facebook fit the profile. So if you're ever wondering how big is my niche and is it too big or too small, Facebook can tell you. So I find this just a great way to block any feeling I may have that I've picked something, such a narrow niche, there's 5 people in my area that would apply. Lock it into Facebook, pretend to run an ad, and you'll find out there's actually 50,000 of them, and it's probably a market there. So I find that's a great way to stop doubting yourself, and help you get a feel. Maybe even my niche isn't narrow enough.
Yep.
If you've got a market, if you run that sort of ad and it still tells you there's 600,000 people in your local area that applies to, the niche is not narrow enough. It needs to be narrower than that to really resonate. Because what happens is when you narrow it down like that, the messages you build for them, the way you communicate is so clear, they can refer to you, everybody they know who's just like them. Yep. So it becomes this wonderful viral messaging sort of thing, because the way you're communicating and the problems that they have that you solve are super duper clear and really narrow.
Peter, I love that. I hadn't heard that or thought of that before, but that is a really great way of going about it. And you're right, figure out how to niche down. I had Dr. Mara Harvey on the podcast recently, and she was talking about how women are not a segment. 50% of the planet cannot be a segment, and I still talk with advisors that are looking at starting a new business. They're like, well, I think I want to, specialize in working with women. And you're like, okay, well, let's maybe narrow it down from there. So yeah, if you put in, hey, I can work with people around the world, women, like,
yeah.
Maybe
and look,
if you want to,
it's so funny. It's like saying I want to serve humans.
Yeah.
If they've got a pulse, that's the people I want to serve. It's so funny you say that, because when I've presented on this to advisors a couple of times, and so I always give them a really cheeky example. I'll go into Facebook and I'll put in women between the age of 25 and 35 who live in Melbourne but follow a Sydney football team, who love Game of Thrones and are single. Like I'll do this completely ridiculous. And of course it still comes up with 70,000 of them. And It's like, so think about how you could build a messaging in a service for women of such a narrow age who are single, who love Game of Thrones. So there's your communication language, who follow a particular footy team, who imagine how cool that offering could be, how cool the marketing could be. And look, it's so interesting, and we laugh, but it'd be a pretty awesome business. Like if you loved Game of Thrones and you could serve people who loved Game of Thrones, where's the hurt in that? So it is, it's really powerful, once you get that creative. And I guess that's, we're numbers people, right? In financial advice, we all fall back on the numbers. So I think we'll naturally fall back on the boring demographics, age, financial status, sex, all the sort of things. And really, I don't think that's where the juice is. I think the magic really is how they feel and where they're at. That's the magic. And if somebody's a human hamster at 80, so be it. If they meet all of the sort of messaging we're delivering and can get some value, then I don't care what age they are, we can add them some value. So yeah, it's hard, but it's super fun too. So in fact, the first exercise I'd say to people is come up with the most ludicrous niche you can think of, just as a way to sort of stretching your brain a bit and making you realize you actually could build that business. You could actually, well, if I could build that business, what other type of business could I build? And it just gets you to really stretch your thinking.
Well, and especially if it is those things that you really enjoy. I mean, we all like talking with like-minded people and getting to know them. And yeah, if you have people that you're not just talking about money, because you shouldn't be talking about money all that often anyway, you should be talking about the bigger things in life. And if you can talk about footy and Game of Thrones and, whatever those little itty bitty things are, I mean, how much more fun would that be building that business?
100%. And remembering that communication, really great communication, rests in storytelling. So if you have a shared language, whether it's that you like bike riding or, you're a cyclist or you're a Game of Thrones fan or a gardener, whatever it is, that gives you a language to communicating, because the stories through that shared interest communicate things in seconds that would take you an hour to try and tell the full story, so something that can just simplify things massively can really make such a difference in the way that it really resonates in people's brains. We could describe something quite complicated, from a financial perspective, I mean, that 401k, whatever it is, a particular thing they need to understand. But if you can give them an analogy from something they love, it will rest in their brain and they'll never forget it. In fact, they'll tell other people about it. This happened. So there's a strategy in Australia that's basically about cycling money in and out of your superannuation, right? And it's called the transition to retirement plan. It's just a way it's a tax play, and to be frank, it's lots of boxes and arrows. And for a lot of clients every year, it's just like, oh, this seems really hard. I know there must be some benefit, but what am I doing? So it gets questioned almost every year because it's so complicated. They sort of forget why they're doing it. And so the storytelling I gave them was, look, this is just like legal money laundering. We're just washing the money to get a better tax rate, right? And never had another question because it resonated that this was something going in and out. They're washing, great, tax rate, better tax rate, washing. It just stuck, and so then we never questioned that again. We move on to the next thing we need to talk about. So storytelling and shortcuts like that can be so powerful to help them hold on to a concept. And then move on to the next thing. So yeah, I'd like the niching thing. If you're a cyclist, find a way to narrow down into that niche, or maybe your daughter is a competitive ice skater. Well, there's a whole lot of parents of competitive ice skaters that could do with some help. Whatever it is that is your thing, I'd highly encourage you to think about a way you could start niching that way. I'm not saying, hey, sell your business, start from scratch. Like, you don't need to do that. You can gradually transition into this. It can be a small side offer that becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and probably will overtake the rest of your business over time.
Yeah. All right. So Peita, let's say we've got our super narrowed down niche. Now, how do we go about designing a customer journey that begins before formal advice or product selling?
I know this is crazy. This once again fell on this accidentally. I really wish I could say that I'm just some genius that comes up with this stuff myself, but I don't. I sort of accidentally come onto these ideas, and I realize that a lot of really clever and effective entrepreneurs are storytelling well ahead of where the ideal consumer is. So it's almost like they get them 40 steps before they've become that niche, that target. And they almost, their communication and their interaction turns them into the ideal client. So it's sort of understanding your target so well that 4 steps ahead, you can connect with them, even though it might not be as a client. You can connect to them as part of a community, perhaps your little, maybe it's a social community on social media or a blog or whatever it is, a podcast. You can actually build that community and end up turning them into your ideal client. And that's actually where the human hamster thing starts for us, is me doing 2 things. One is public speaking, and this is about living life like an action hero. How do we do that? And I might sneak a little bit of money stuff in there, but they don't even realize I do. And the second is a podcast, the In Search of Adventure show. And so that's me just profiling everyday people living extraordinary lives, or having extraordinary adventures. And so this is just a way to start collecting the people that are going to resonate with your end offer and helping them a bit. It's that sort of freemium marketing. You provide free solutions, but they're not financial. It's just helping them out, problem solving, engaging, connecting them with you, and then having a journey they go through from there through ultimately to advice. So ours starts with me presenting or the podcast. We then have a 30-day dream challenge where in 30 days they build up a list of over 50 things they'd love to do, see, or experience in life. So once again, it's freebie. It's just on social media and they can participate in that. And that's part of helping them build a new habit. So it's, start with a first contact, how they can get your first message, then help them maybe build a new habit, something simple. And then the next step can be highlight the need they have. So maybe that's a test or a score they could do that's going to highlight the specific thing you could solve for them. So for us, it's a Z score. This is their Zaptitude score. Do they have the gumption to get on top of their money? How do they feel about money? And when one of the things is they just feel lost, adrift, stuck in the hamster cage, hey, we can help with our money program. So it's this gradual, understanding sort of the cycle somebody goes through to get to you, and then sort of reverse engineering that and actually building a journey that gets them to the ultimate point. You've then done, say, some money coaching for them, and ultimately then you've got to the point they want to do wonderful things in life. They've got all these plans in place and they're starting to get on top of their cash flow, and it's like, right, have we got the advice offer for you? So it's way, way down the end. But do they feel engaged or what? They are part of our club. In fact, we've got a private Facebook group called the Adventure Club Room, and it literally is meant to be that secret knock on the door, get in, these are your people. These are crazy action heroes like you, and we all talk about the sort of stuff that crazy action heroes like us do or want to do. So yeah, it's a quite different approach, but to be frank, is more like what most entrepreneurs do. They sort of get them to commit a little bit more time or a bit more money, and then a little bit more time or a bit more money. And that's how you turn them into high-paying clients.
Yeah, it's that whole customer journey. And that was a spot on thing, is looking at it like an entrepreneur and a business owner, not necessarily like just what other financial planners are doing. And I know one of the things you talk about is the need to look outside your industry or profession for learning and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say this is the case for anything in life, isn't it? I think when it's not until we see something different from where we're at or what we're doing that we go, oh, maybe I could approach that a bit differently,
Yeah.
So, and our business and advice is the same. I think it's not until you look at other industries that, I think you realise that as an industry, we are way behind in terms of tech and all sorts of things. But also you can start to look for those applied innovation opportunities. Look, what are they doing over there that's really cool? How could I apply that into my business or my world? I think I've looked at all sorts of industries. Logistics. They've been using something like RFID for decades. And we're all just now coping with digital signatures. Really?
Yeah.
Really? So it's looking at other industries and realizing that the things that we all have globally struggled with, which is automation and sort of lifting our business out of the face-to-face and paper into the digital and virtual, and realize that there's other industries that went there well ahead of us. So take a look at that, ask them what they faced and what the challenges were, learn from that, and then apply it within your own world. So I guess once again, it's that curiosity, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. Curiosity is powerful, and it's exciting. Like, I love being curious about things. And that's one reason I started the podcast. Like, I get to talk with so many people, and I'm just curious, how did they come up with things? How did they, go on their journey and get to where they're at? People are fascinating.
They are. And I think we don't know everything. In fact, I don't think we know much,
No.
So you need to go out there and find other people to help you understand more. I mean, that curiosity led me some years ago to FinCon, the Personal Finance Bloggers Conference, right? And of course, in Australia in particular, but I think in our industry, even now, blogging is sort of probably approached as something you might do a bit of on your website, and you might send out the blog on your newsletter. Like, I mean, that's just like, it's just considered, well, I guess, I can put a story together about the markets or about what's happening with COVID, or, I mean, whatever, so we sort of think it as that tool. And here I go to this conference, which for starters had about 2 advisors out of the 700 people there, which was fascinating to me. It's a personal finance conference and only 2 advisors there. And then I go there, and here are people who have blogs that are earning them enough money to do it full time, talking about money stuff, not a degree between them. They don't have the background. What they're doing is learning themselves. They've messed it up themselves, whether it's student loans or credit card debt or whatever it might be, and then they help people solve it. That's all they've done. And that was a real eye-opener to me. Like, okay.
Yeah, and they're not
communicate that well.
Yeah, they're not certified. They don't have licenses. Nope. They can't,
Nope.
I have some issues with sort of how they kind of fly under the regulatory radar, just because, other advisors really are going through a lot. But it is a great point in terms of the fact that they are able to reach so many people is because they speak in a language and on topics that people can understand. They're not using jargon. In fact, they're out there breaking down the jargon and making the complex simple and being engaging with people. And you're so right. Like, advisors have so much to learn from that, and realizing, okay, why are these tens or hundreds of thousands of people going to these uncertified people versus, all of us in the advisory industry working to get the certifications and stay relevant and get our CPD, and I talk with a lot of people that are struggling to get clients. And you're like, well, how are you approaching it? What is your customer journey? Do you have that niche? How are you communicating with people and engaging them in a way that makes them want to engage back?
And I think, and this is hard, this is soul searching sort of stuff, and it takes time, but what really is the best gift you can give? So my background is, deep maths nerd, actuarial studies at uni, double degree in finance, worked in mergers and acquisitions as an analyst, hardcore nerd. I mean, basically Big Bang Theory is my uni life, right? I know 12 Sheldons. So deeply intellectual and nerdy. But it turns out the best gift I can give our customers, our clients, is nothing to do with that. It's communication and empathy. So the storytelling, the way that I can connect with the deepest problems they have and draw those out, that is actually the best gift, not all of that technical and deeply complex background. And I think as an industry, we need to get our heads around that. That's why these bloggers are resonating. It's because it's the gap we've left.
Yep.
We've left this simple cash flowy, simple solution, and we've not ignored it, but we've sort of sidelined it for complexity. And for most human beings out there, they're worried about just paying their bills.
Yeah.
The complexity of how should they invest their 401k is well down the list of concerns. And so if that's all we've got to bring to the party, then I think that's part of the challenge that I think we've all faced. And it's why, and I've learned this lesson over time. In fact, even in M&A, so I was working in corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions when the tech bubble happened, right? And so what's funny about that is, once again, the lesson I learned was cash flow is king. Those businesses had no cash flow and no prospect of cash flow, right? But in M&A, they were selling on massive multiples, and there was all these big deals happening, and it was all about Silicon Valley, and it was insane. But the analysts were all going, so I can't do any analysis because there's nothing now, there's nothing in the future, and there's nothing I can discount for you. Like, what am I going to analyze, And so it was a lesson for me that made such a difference. And I think in advice, we can't ignore cash flow. Even if we partner with somebody to help with that, that's the first and biggest thing for most people, earn more than you spend. Like, it's a really simple thing, but we all know lots of people can't get that right, let alone something more complex.
At every income. And that's the thing. And I keep seeing it. And that's what also was so, because I've been to FinCon a couple times as well, and seeing, you've got all these like financial coaches and money coaches. And I was looking at what they were doing, and I was so confused, because I was like, those are just the first steps, or some of the first steps in working with a financial planner. And, I think we're finally starting to see that coaching and advice or planning overlap, but it was just crazy to me. I was like, why are these two separate things? And then talking with a lot of planners that were like, oh, we don't deal with cash flow because clients, we work with high net worth clients and they have that figured out. And I was like, no, they don't.
No. In fact, I would argue, so the higher the salary, the worse the problem is.
Yes.
In my experience. And because your salary and the number of zeros gives you a false sense of security, right? You're like, but I'm earning $300,000. That's great, dude, but you're spending $360,000.
Yeah.
So actually, you could just go and get a job at McDonald's and be ahead at this point. It's that realization that, in fact, perhaps the biggest gift we could give anybody is just teaching them to spend less than they earn. That would get them so far ahead, almost all of their colleagues and their friends and family. I mean, that's how big the problem is. The level of consumer debt is so high. I mean, and, in the US, the student loans. So you're even starting before you start work.
Yep.
You have a massive amount of debt. So I sort of feel like there's an obligation in us to have a solution to that. I feel like we need to acknowledge and respond to that need, because actually I feel like the customer or the public think that's what we do anyway.
Right.
So I actually think they're expecting us to solve that problem for them. And so when our solution is something more complicated and needs to wait until they've sorted out that problem and have some money to invest, well, that's where the distance and the lack of resonance starts to happen.
I wondered if part of it is also how many advisors and planners out there maybe themselves spend more than they earn.
Perhaps. And it's a cold, hard truth we probably need to get on top of for ourselves is, what is your own attitude to your day-to-day money? And if you can't be, truthful with yourself, it doesn't mean you've got to have it all sorted, but you need to be able to be truthful. Once again, like we were talking before, being a bit honest with your own vulnerabilities, I think, can make a huge difference. And I mean, I tell the story to clients all the time where I said, look, when I was earning huge money in investment banking, and I didn't have a dime at the end of that time. In fact, I had some debt. Because you just lived this life that was ridiculous and surrounded by a whole lot of other people that live a life that's ridiculous. So it's, the whole thing is a bit insane. And I was earning all that money and had nothing to show for it. Like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Not even experiences, because I was working 120-hour weeks. It's not like I had a whole lot of great holidays too. I didn't have photos of something to go, hey, this is where the money went. Not even that.
Yeah.
So I think being honest with ourselves, once again, will really help you connect with the right customer. Because like, you're not perfect and a robot, You understand how hard it is for me. I will therefore listen to you. You've been there before.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And that's the mindset where if you're the guide, I don't think you can really be the guide without truly understanding where they're coming from.
I couldn't agree
truly
more.
understanding the pain they've been through.
Yeah. Awesome. Peita, I love it. You've opened my eyes to things I hadn't thought about before. Tons of value to listeners. Hopefully everyone out there is hopping on Facebook, which, side note, a little terrifying that, they can narrow down as far as they can, but that's a conversation for another day. But that is a great exercise to do, and think about, turning inward and going, what am I really passionate about? What do I enjoy? What would I love to talk about? Because this is such a great profession, and we have opportunities to live amazing lives while helping other people live their most amazing lives. So I'm linking to your podcast, In Search of Adventure, below, linking to your LinkedIn so people can connect with you, your website.
Please do. I'd love to reach out. Anybody listening, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Any final thoughts for listeners?
No, I guess, just one little gift. I am a bit of an automation freak. And we've been talking about the customer journey and building things out for people. Look, please don't automate awful. As advisors, I think we spend a lot of time, trying to automate a pretty awful process. So just as my last little gem, fix your process and your journey first and then automate it, because all tech does is amplify whatever's there. So if it's awful, it'll amplify awful. And if it's great, it'll amplify great. So I just really encourage you, please don't automate awful processes. You will regret it at some point in the future.
Yes, fantastic. Peita, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Innovating Advice Show. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a thought or two. Link to my profile is right below. Stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to hearing from you.